We start off with part 2 of the best episode of House of the Dragon so far. It's the best rated on IMDb, sitting as it is on a score of 9.1, which would be important if review sites could be trusted at all, but sadly they can't. IMDb being owned by Amazon is a pretty clear conflict of interest. The score maybe could have gone higher with some Jason Momoa playing Khal Drogo with his shirt off, because women like it, and he certainly put Aquaman in his shirtless back and carried it home. Maybe some Esme Bianco for the discerning gentleman, just being Esme Bianco and sexing the place up a bit. I'm not sure what you'd seen off camera here, but the good money is on Marilyn Manson. In House of the Dragon they've toned down the sexual content a bit compared to Game of Thrones, which is ironic in a programme with the acronym Hot D. I'm not sure if people are doing it on purpose at this point. Surely you can't call your show Hot D by accident, or call your show Star Trek Discovery and not notice you have the acronym STD, or the short-lived UK political party, Change UK, that unironically had the acronym COOK. And what sex there is in Hot D seems very tame compared to the scenes from Littlefinger's establishment in Thrones, where HBO straight up hired, let's call them naughty film actresses, including this lady, Sahara Knite, who in Thrones played the character Armika. Despite her somewhat exotic looks, it seems she was born in London. Also, you may be shocked to learn that Sahara Knite, not her real name. Shocking, I know. Sahara Knight's IMDb page is educational. I remember fondly when I first looked at her IMDb page after seeing her in Thrones and wondering what else she'd been in. And most of it is filthy. She does a lot of speciality film for kinks I didn't know were a thing and kind of wish weren't, including a film I've never watched and probably never will, but the name alone makes me laugh every time. She did a film in 2006 called, brace yourself, it was called Chloroformed Assassin. If you're curious, I believe in it she played the assassin. And after Thrones she went right back to it, including the film Dr. Lacey's Sex Therapist 2. And no, I'm not reviewing that. Well, maybe if I get 1,000 subscribers and you all rarely want me to. In fact, yeah, if I get monetised, I promise I will maybe watch and review Dr. Lacey's Sex Therapist 2, and then YouTube can demonetise me again. But instead of that, in House of the Dragon, we have some talking on a boat. That may not sound as good, but it may not sound as racy or exciting as Dr. Lacey's Sex Therapist 2 or Chloroformed Assassin, but give it a chance. It's good, I promise. The princess is on a boat, coming home from Driftmark after getting engaged to the son of the Valerian family, and Sir Kristen comes to talk to her about their relationship. It turns out he's conflicted after the sexcapade in her room. He says he knows her. They spent a lot of time together, and he knows that this marriage is not what she wanted. She'd complained to years to him about not wanting to be married off to a nobleman, and here they are. It's finally happened. Kristen's there to offer her another way. He wants her to run away with him. He says they can marry for love and be free in Essos, or Ashai in the east. He says he'll give her what she said she always wanted. They can marry for love and not for a crown. And she coldly responds with, I am the crown, Sir Kristen, or I will be. I may chafe at my duties, but do you think I'd choose infamy in exchange for a bushel of oranges and a ship to Ashai? She says, though, it doesn't have to be the end for us. Leonor and I have an arrangement. We can get married, and you and I can still be together. And Sir Kristen responds, so you want me to be your whore?
Boy, that escalated quickly. I mean, that really got out of hand fast.
There's a lot going on here. Sir Kristen is clearly not in a good way. He explains to the princess that when he slept with her, he broke his oath to the King's Guard. His honour and that cloak are all he has, he says. He says in marrying her, he thought he could at least get some of his honour back. So it's unclear on Sir Kristen's part, how much his suggestion was to give her what she wanted, and how much of it was just for him. The princess is lost for words, and defaults to a well-worn speech about how important her family and destiny are, how important her family history is, and the implications are clear. She doesn't love Kristen. She doesn't even see him as an equal. To her, he is, and always was, an amusement, a thing to be played with. Halfway through her speech, he turns and walks off. Back in King's Landing, and we have another great scene. I promise, it may be a lot of talking and no nudie women, but it is good all the same. As the king arrives back in a coach, he collapses while getting out of it, and he's being watched from the walls by Alison. It's a callback to the scene earlier with Alison and her father, of how her father said the king would not live to be an old man. Alison realises that her time is running out. When the king dies, it will be war and bloodshed. Alison immediately calls for Sir Kristen Cole, who just arrived back with the king. She wants to talk to him about what Laris told her earlier, about the princess and her uncle in the brothel. She thinks Kristen will know, because Kristen has to guard the princess's door. Alison wants to know if the princess lied to her. Alison says to Kristen, "There's been a rumour. My father received an account of a lapse of morals." Now, she's talking about the princess and Damon, but Kristen doesn't know that. Kristen thinks she's talking about the princess and Kristen. Alison is beating around the bush. She doesn't want to just come out and say it. She doesn't want to directly ask about the princess and Damon out of propriety. And suddenly Kristen blurts out, "It happened, Your Grace. The sin you allude to, I have committed. At her instigation, but it is no excuse. My oath has been broken. I have dishonoured myself." Kristen asks for mercy from Alison, that he be granted a swift, clean death instead of being castrated and tortured. Emily Carey's acting is interesting. She shows shock, disbelief, anger, disappointment, pity for Kristen. She realises that in all probability her best friend lied to her face, even swearing on the memory of her dead mother. Alison backed her friend and weakened her family, and her friend was lying all along. The princess and Alison are very different. Alison is very proper. She does her duty. And what has it got her? A marriage to a man she doesn't love and no happiness. In contrast, the princess does what she wants. She considers herself above other people, and she's not happy either. I have no criticism about this scene at all. I thought both actors did a fantastic job. Meanwhile, the king's condition gets worse. His arm looks like it's rotting. The medics seem able to do nothing for him. We then cut to the feast before the royal wedding. Nobles file in, but the king is annoyed. His wife Alison should have been there by now. And what's Damon doing there? The king is a jelly. How many times has the king got to banish this man before it sticks? He banished him the second time for sexual misconduct with the king's own daughter, whose wedding this is. Damon's head should be on a pike for going there, but the king lets him off over and over again. The Queen finally arrives late in the middle of the king's speech, and all eyes are on her in a beautiful emerald green dress. The whole episode is filled with foreshadowing. In the crowd, Laris asks Harwin, "What colour does the beacon at Old Town glow when Old Town calls its banners to war?" And Harwin says green. The implications are clear. Alison means to go to war. There's also a lot of dancing, and the makers foreshadow a lot of later relationships with who dances with who. It's all very important. Damon goes to dance with the princess and asks her, "Is this what you want? Laenor's a fine man, but will bore you to death." The princess is downright dangerous. She taunts Damon to reach out and take her. If he wants her, all he has to do is kill the Kingsguard and take her. He still has time. He can take her back to Dragonstone and marry her. And frankly, he looks tempted. The princess continues to be dangerous to everyone around her. During the festivities, Leonor's paramour Joffrey notices Sir Kristen staring at the princess and guesses that Sir Kristen is the princess's lover. He goes to talk to Kristen, stressing that it's their job to protect their lovers, and they part ways. Then something happens later in the crowd and off camera, and the hall is suddenly thrown into chaos. A fight's broken out between Kristen and Joffrey, and it's turned very nasty. After punching the groom in the face, sending his silly silver dreadlock wig flying like Rick James being slapped by Charlie Murphy,
Extensions was flying all over the place.
Sir Kristen has Joffrey pinned to the floor while he punches him in the face. He beats him to death on the floor in the middle of the feast in front of an enormous crowd. By the time Kristen's finished punching, Joffrey barely has a face left. I can't imagine what he said to Kristen, but the brutality is reminiscent of the Viper against the Mountain. The ceremony happens later, and they don't even mop all of Joffrey off the floor before the ceremony. Kristen goes to the Godswood. He cannot handle the dishonour any longer and intends to kill himself. Maybe in part he wants a clean death instead of the torture that he thinks is probably coming. He has a knife at his belly when he's stopped by Alison. The episode ends with the king collapsing at the wedding ceremony, while in the foreground a rat eats some of Joffrey from off the floor, foreshadowing the king's mortality. And that wraps it up. Solid work from all involved. The show is now well above average and stands out even more in quite weak company. Make no mistake, this show embarrasses the Rings of Power.